Ava Moreno thought hiring a fake boyfriend for $500 would solve her problems. She had no idea she just made a deal with the most dangerous man in the city. When her sleazy boss backed down after one look at her mysterious date, she believed she was finally safe. But the threatening messages started that same night, and suddenly men in dark cars were following her 7-year-old sister to school. The stranger she'd hired wasn't just playing a role. He was Luca Romano, a Mafia boss whose enemies would kill to get to him. Now Ava and Sophie were trapped in a world of bulletproof cars and armed guards, where love could mean life or death. What started as a desperate lie became a dangerous truth that would either destroy them or give them everything they'd ever dreamed of. Subscribe and tell me in the comments, would you trust a stranger with your sister's life if it was your only option? Ava Moreno pressed her face against the cold hospital window. Her breath fogged the glass as she watched the parking lot below. Sophie lay curled on the plastic chair behind her, finally sleeping after 3 hours of tests. The seizure had started during art class. Sophie's teacher called while Ava was filing insurance claims at her desk job downtown. By the time she reached the school, her 7-year-old sister was already in the ambulance. "Miss Moreno?" Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway holding a clipboard. His face was tired but kind. "Sophie's stable now. The medication adjustment should help." Ava felt relief wash over her. "Can we go home?" "Yes, but I'm prescribing a new anti-seizure drug. It's stronger than what she's been taking." He handed her the prescription slip. "This should prevent future episodes." Ava stared at the paper. The medication name meant nothing to her, but the dosage instructions filled half the page. "How much will this cost?" "Around $400 monthly. Your insurance should cover most of it." Her chest tightened. Their insurance barely covered the current medications. $400 might as well be $4,000. "Thank you, doctor." Dr. Chen left them alone. Ava knelt beside Sophie's chair and brushed dark hair from her sister's forehead. Sophie's eyes fluttered open. "We going home now?" Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. She rarely spoke above that volume anymore. "Yes, baby, we're going home." The prescription felt heavy in Ava's pocket as they walked through the hospital lobby. She'd already missed half a day of work. Her boss, Mr. Kellerman, hated when employees left early, even for emergencies. Her phone buzzed. A text from Kellerman. "See me first thing tomorrow. We need to discuss your schedule." Ava's stomach dropped. She needed this job. Without it, they'd lose their apartment, Sophie's medical coverage, everything. The next morning, Ava helped Sophie get ready for school in their tiny kitchen. Their apartment had one bedroom, which Sophie used. Ava slept on the pull-out couch in the living room. The radiator clanked constantly, but at least it worked. "Did you take your vitamins?" Ava asked, packing Sophie's lunch. Sophie nodded and picked at her cereal. She ate slowly now, carefully, as if sudden movements might trigger another seizure. Someone knocked on the door. Ava opened it to find Mrs. Patterson from downstairs holding an envelope. "This was slipped under the main door," Mrs. Patterson said. "It has your apartment number on it." Ava took the envelope. Her name was written across the front in red ink. Inside was a notice from their landlord. "Rent increase effective immediately. Pay additional $200 or face eviction proceedings." "Everything okay, dear?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Yes, thank you." Ava closed the door and leaned against it. $200 extra monthly, plus Sophie's new medication, plus her possibly reduced work hours. She was drowning. At work, Ava sat at her desk reviewing insurance claims. Her job was simple but tedious. She processed paperwork for a medical billing company, entering data from morning until evening. The pay was low but steady. Mr. Kellerman's office door opened. He was 50 years old with thinning hair and coffee stains on his shirts. His eyes always lingered too long when he talked to female employees. "Moreno," he called, "my office, now." Ava walked across the room feeling her co-workers' stares. Kellerman's office smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap cologne. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down." His voice was flat. "We need to talk about your attendance." "I had a family emergency yesterday. My sister was in the hospital." "That's the third emergency this month." Kellerman leaned back in his chair. "I'm cutting your hours to part-time, 20 hours a week instead of 40. Ava felt her world tilt. "Mr. Kellerman, please, I need this job. My sister has medical bills." The decision's made. He picked up a pen and started writing. "Unless..." The word hung in the air between them. Ava's skin crawled. "Unless what?" "There's a landlord appreciation event tonight. Fancy dinner, networking. I need a date." His smile made her feel sick. "You come with me? I might reconsider the hour reduction." Ava's hands clenched in her lap. "I can't. My sister..." "Think about it." Kellerman's eyes traveled down her body. "The event starts at 7. Dress nice." Ava left his office feeling dizzy. She sat at her desk and tried to focus on the insurance forms, but the numbers blurred together. 20 hours meant half her current salary. They'd lose the apartment within a month. During lunch break, she overheard two co-workers talking near the coffee machine. "I'm telling you, it works," said Janet from accounting. "My friend hired some guy to pretend to be her boyfriend at her cousin's wedding. Scared off all the creepy relatives asking why she was still single." "Where did she find him?" asked Maria from billing. "Posted on one of those bulletin boards. Offered $500 for one night." The guy was gorgeous and totally believable. Ava stirred her coffee and listened. $500 for pretending to date someone for a few hours. It sounded crazy, but Janet's friend had apparently solved her problem. The hospital lobby had a community bulletin board near the pharmacy. People posted everything there: rooms for rent, used cars, babysitting services. Ava had seen it when they picked up Sophie's medications. After work, Ava drove to Sophie's school. The pickup line moved slowly, giving her time to think. Kellerman expected an answer about tonight. She couldn't go to that dinner with him, but she couldn't afford to lose more hours either. Sophie climbed into the back seat looking pale and tired. "How was school, baby?" "Okay." Sophie buckled her seatbelt. "Mrs. Garcia asked if I was feeling better." "What did you tell her?" "That the medicine makes me sleepy." Sophie leaned her head against the window. "Can we go home now?" Instead of heading home, Ava drove to the hospital. She told Sophie they needed to check on prescription prices, which was partly true. The new medication cost exactly what Dr. Chen had estimated, far more than they could afford. The bulletin board was covered with flyers and business cards. Ava pulled out a pen and a piece of paper from her purse. Her hand shook as she wrote, "Need someone to pretend to be my boyfriend for one evening. Professional event. Must look respectable. $500 cash, serious inquiries only." She added her phone number at the bottom and pinned the note to the board. It was probably stupid, but she was desperate. At home, Sophie fell asleep early. Ava sat on the couch with her laptop, trying to find ways to make extra money. Freelance writing, weekend cleaning jobs, anything to cover the rent increase and Sophie's medication. Her phone rang around 8 o'clock. Unknown number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "You posted a notice about needing someone for an event." The voice was deep and calm. "I'm interested." Ava's heart jumped. "Oh, yes, it's tonight, actually. In about an hour." What kind of event? A dinner, business thing. I just need someone to stand next to me and look protective. She felt foolish saying it out loud. Protective from what? My boss. He's been inappropriate, and he thinks if I bring a date, it'll prove I'm not interested in his advances. The man was quiet for a moment. Where should I meet you? They arranged to meet at her apartment building. Ava gave him the address and hung up, immediately wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. She was about to let a complete stranger into her life, around her sister, based on a desperate plan. But what choice did she have? Ava showered quickly and put on her only nice dress, black, simple, appropriate for a professional dinner. She checked on Sophie, who was sleeping peacefully in her bed. Mrs. Patterson agreed to listen for Sophie while Ava was gone. Just for a couple hours, Ava promised. I'll have my phone on. At exactly 9 o'clock, someone knocked on the building's main door. Ava looked through the window and saw a man in dark clothing waiting on the steps. He was tall, with broad shoulders and short black hair. Even from a distance, she could sense his composure. She walked downstairs and opened the door. I'm Luca, he said simply. Up close, he was more striking than she'd expected. Dark eyes, strong jaw, expensive-looking clothes, despite their simplicity. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting yourself. Ava. She stepped back to let him in. Thank you for coming. I know this is unusual. You have the money? She handed him the envelope containing $500, her last savings, the money she'd been keeping for emergencies. It's all there. Luca took the envelope, without counting it. Tell me about tonight. What do you need me to do? They sat in the lobby while Ava explained about Kellerman and the dinner. Luca listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. This man has been pressuring you for sex, he said when she finished. Heat rushed to Ava's cheeks. Not exactly. He's been suggestive. Tonight was the first time he was direct about it. And you think bringing me will stop him? I hope so. Ava looked at her hands. I just need someone intimidating enough that he'll back off. You don't even have to say much. Just be present. Something shifted in Luca's expression. What happens if he doesn't back off? Then I'll deal with it myself. This is just for show. Luca stood up. We should go. Where's this dinner? The event was at an upscale restaurant downtown. Ava had never eaten anywhere that expensive. The host led them to a private dining room where about 30 people mingled with drinks and appetizers. Kellerman spotted them immediately. His face darkened when he saw Luca beside her. Moreno. Kellerman approached with a forced smile. I didn't expect you to bring someone. This is Luca, Ava said, my boyfriend. Kellerman extended his hand. Luca shook it briefly, his grip apparently firm enough to make Kellerman wince slightly. Pleasure to meet you, Kellerman said, but his voice sounded strained. What do you do for work, Luca? Business consulting. Luca's tone was polite but cold. What kind of business? The profitable kind. Luca's eyes never left Kellerman's face. Kellerman laughed nervously and excused himself to get another drink. Ava felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. That was perfect, she whispered to Luca. He's already uncomfortable. They moved through the room, making small talk with other guests. Luca played his role convincingly. Attentive, protective, slightly possessive. When other men approached Ava, he stepped closer to her. When someone asked about their relationship, he answered with just enough detail to sound believable. Dinner was served at a long table. Ava sat between Luca and another woman from the billing company. Kellerman was seated across from them, shooting dark glances in their direction. Halfway through the main course, Kellerman stood up and walked around the table. Ava, he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Could I speak with you privately? Before she could answer, Luca's hand moved to rest on her shoulder. She's fine where she is. Kellerman's face reddened. This is a business matter. Then discuss it during business hours. Luca's voice was still calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. The conversation around them quieted. Other guests were starting to notice the tension. Kellerman leaned down toward Ava. Don't think this changes anything about tomorrow. Luca stood up smoothly and stepped between them. He didn't say anything, just looked at Kellerman with the kind of stare that made people remember they had somewhere else to be. Kellerman backed away. We'll discuss this later. No, Luca said quietly. You won't. The rest of dinner passed without incident. Kellerman avoided their side of the table and left early without saying goodbye. Other guests began filtering out around 10 o'clock. Ava and Luca walked outside together. The night air was cool and clean after the stuffy restaurant. Thank you, Ava said. That went better than I expected. Will he bother you again? I don't think so. You were pretty convincing. She studied Luca's profile in the streetlight. You're good at this? Good at what? Being intimidating. Most people can't pull that off without looking like they're trying too hard. Luca's mouth curved slightly. Maybe I wasn't trying. A taxi pulled up to the curb. Ava raised her hand to flag it down. I can drive you home, Luca offered. That's okay. You've done enough. She opened the taxi door. Thanks again for tonight. Luca nodded and stepped back. Ava got into the taxi and gave the driver her address. As they pulled away from the curb, she looked through the rear window and saw Luca still standing on the sidewalk, watching them leave. At home, Mrs. Patterson reported that Sophie had slept through the evening. Ava thanked her neighbor and went upstairs to check on her sister. Sophie was curled up with her stuffed elephant, breathing steadily. Ava changed into pajamas and sat on the couch, replaying the evening. Luca had been exactly what she needed, composed, protective, quietly threatening. Kellerman would think twice before pressuring her again. But something about Luca bothered her. The way he'd handled Kellerman wasn't just acting. There was real authority in his voice, real menace in his stare. He'd moved through that room like someone accustomed to being obeyed. Her phone buzzed with a text. Sleep well. You're safe now. The number was Luca's. Ava stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Safe from what? Kellerman was unpleasant, but hardly dangerous. She turned off her phone and went to bed, but sleep was slow to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's face. When he'd looked at Kellerman, calm and cold and absolutely certain of his power. The next morning, Sophie woke up crying. She'd had another nightmare, the kind that started after their parents died in the car accident 2 years ago. Ava held her sister until the tears stopped. We're okay, Ava whispered into Sophie's hair. We're safe here. But even as she said it, she wondered if it was true. At work, Kellerman avoided eye contact and didn't mention the dinner or her hours. By lunchtime, Ava realized he wasn't going to cut her schedule. Luca's presence had worked exactly as she'd hoped. She should have felt relieved, but instead she felt watched. Twice during the day, she noticed a black car parked across from her office building. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Around 3 o'clock, her phone rang. Luca's number. How's your day going? He asked. Fine. My boss hasn't bothered me. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. The black car was still there. Are you having me followed? I wanted to make sure you got to work safely. From my apartment to my office, it's a 15-minute drive. Dangerous things can happen in 15 minutes. Ava felt her chest tighten. What aren't you telling me? Luca was quiet for a moment. Men like your boss don't always give up when they're embarrassed publicly. I wanted to be careful. Well, you can stop being careful now. He's leaving me alone. Good. Luca's voice was softer now. I'm glad you're safe. Thank you for last night and for today. But this is where it ends, okay? I don't need a bodyguard. Call me if that changes. He hung up before she could respond. Ava looked out the window again. The black car was gone. At 5 o'clock, she left the office and walked to her car in the parking garage. Someone had slashed both front tires. The cuts were clean and deliberate, not random vandalism. Ava's hands shook as she called a towing service. While she waited, she looked around the garage for security cameras. There were several, but she doubted the footage would show anything useful. Her phone rang. Unknown number? Miss Moreno? The voice was raspy and unfamiliar. You should have minded your own business last night. The line went dead. Ava dropped her phone, her heart racing. She picked it up and immediately called Luca. Someone slashed my tires, she said when he answered. And they just called me. Where are you? The parking garage at my office building. Don't move, I'm coming. Luca, I can handle... Don't move, he repeated and hung up. 10 minutes later, a black sedan pulled into the garage. Luca got out and walked toward her with the same controlled urgency she'd seen at the restaurant. He examined her tires quickly. Did the caller say anything else? That I should have minded my own business. Ava wrapped her arms around herself. Do you think this is about last night? About Kellerman? Maybe. Luca's expression was grim. Or maybe you were noticed by the wrong people. What do you mean? Before Luca could answer, her phone rang again. This time it was Sophie's school. Miss Moreno, this is Principal Walsh. Sophie had an incident during recess. She's okay, but we need you to pick her up. Ava felt panic rise in her throat. What kind of incident? A man approached the playground fence and was asking children about their families. Sophie got scared and had a mild seizure. She's in the nurse's office now. I'm on my way. Ava ended the call and looked at Luca. Someone was at my sister's school asking about children. His face went completely still. Get in my car. We're going there now. What about my car? Leave it. Luca was already walking toward his sedan. This is more important. Ava followed him, her mind racing. The slashed tires, the phone call, now someone at Sophie's school. It couldn't all be coincidence. During the drive to the school, Luca made several phone calls in what sounded like Italian. His voice was clipped and urgent. Who are you calling? Ava asked. People who can help. He glanced at her. How long have you and your sister lived in that apartment? 2 years, since our parents died. Any other family? No, just us. Ava stared out the window. Why are you asking these questions? Because someone is targeting you, and I need to understand why. They reached the school in record time. Sophie was sitting in the nurse's office with her stuffed elephant, looking pale and frightened. She ran to Ava when she saw her. There was a scary man, Sophie whispered against Ava's shoulder. He asked Jenny about her sister. Principal Walsh explained that a man in dark clothing had approached the playground fence during recess. He'd asked several children about their families and siblings before a teacher noticed and called security. He was gone by the time we reached the fence, Principal Walsh said. But Sophie was very upset. She had a mild seizure, more from anxiety than her medical condition. Ava held Sophie tighter. Did anyone get a description of this man? Tall, wearing sunglasses. The children weren't very specific. Principal Walsh looked concerned. Miss Moreno, is there anything we should know? Any reason someone might be interested in your family? Ava looked at Luca, who was standing quietly by the door. His presence seemed to fill the small office. "I don't know," she said honestly. They drove home in tense silence. Sophie sat in the back seat, holding her elephant and staring out the window. Ava kept checking the mirrors for signs they were being followed. At their apartment building, Luca walked them to the door and checked the hallway carefully before letting them go upstairs. "Pack a bag," he said as they reached Ava's door. "Both of you." "What?" Ava fumbled with her keys. "Why?" "Because someone knows where you live and where your sister goes to school." Luca's voice was gentle but firm. "You're not safe here tonight." Ava unlocked the door and stepped inside, pulling Sophie with her. "Where would we go? I can't afford a hotel and I don't have any other family." "You'll stay with me." The words hung in the air between them. Ava stared at Luca, searching his face for some hint of ulterior motive. "I don't even know you," she said finally. "You know enough." Luca stepped closer. "You know I kept you safe last night. You know I came when you called today. And you know your sister is in danger." Sophie tugged on Ava's shirt. "Who's the man, Ava?" "This is Luca, baby. He's a friend." Sophie studied Luca with the serious expression she'd worn since their parents died. "Are you here to help us?" "Yes," Luca said simply. Something in his voice made Sophie nod. "Okay." Ava felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Stay in the apartment and risk another attack, or trust a man she'd met 24 hours ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Pretty little girls need to be protected. Too bad you can't." Ava's blood went cold. She showed the message to Luca. His jaw tightened as he read it. When he looked up, his eyes held something dark and dangerous. "Pack the bag," he said quietly. "Now." Ava threw clothes into a duffel bag while Sophie sat on the bed watching. Her hands shook as she tried to decide what they'd need. How long would they be gone? Where exactly was Luca taking them? "Pack your medications," she told Sophie, "and your elephant." Sophie clutched the stuffed animal tighter. "Are we coming back?" "Of course we are, baby. This is just for a few days." But Ava wasn't sure she believed it herself. The text message kept replaying in her mind. Pretty little girls need to be protected. Someone was specifically threatening Sophie. Luca appeared in the doorway. "Ready?" "Almost." Ava zipped the bag shut. "Where are we going exactly?" "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer." Luca's eyes found hers. "My house. It has security." The drive took 20 minutes through increasingly expensive neighborhoods. Ava watched the houses get larger and the lots more private. When they turned through iron gates, she realized they weren't just going to a house. They were going to an estate. The main building was 3 stories of stone and dark windows. Soft lights illuminated gardens and walkways. 2 men in suits stood near the front entrance, nodding respectfully as Luca's car approached. "Who are those men?" Ava asked. "Security." Sophie pressed her face to the window. "It looks like a castle." Luca parked near the front steps. Before Ava could open her door, one of the security men was there to help her out. He was polite but alert, his eyes constantly scanning the driveway. "Miss Moreno," he said with a slight accent. "I'm Marco. Welcome." The front door opened as they approached. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes smiled at them. "This must be Ava and Sophie," she said warmly. "I'm Lucia. I manage the household." The foyer was larger than Ava's entire apartment. A curved staircase led to the upper floors, and crystal chandeliers cast soft light on marble floors. Sophie stayed close to Ava's side, overwhelmed by the grandeur. "Are you hungry?" Lucia asked. I can prepare something light. We ate dinner already, Ava said quickly. Perhaps some tea then, or milk and cookies for Sophie? Sophie's eyes widened hopefully. Ava realized her sister probably hadn't had a proper homemade cookie in months. That would be nice, Ava said. Thank you. Lucia led them to a sitting room with comfortable furniture and a fireplace. Sophie settled onto the couch with her elephant, while Lucia went to prepare the snacks. Luca stood by the window, speaking quietly into his phone. Ava caught fragments of the conversation, all in Italian, but his tone was serious and urgent. "This is beautiful," Ava said when he finished the call. She gestured around the room. "How long have you lived here?" 5 years. Luca sat across from them. "It belonged to my grandfather originally." "What kind of business consulting do you do?" Ava asked. "You never really explained." Something shifted in Luca's expression. "Family business, import and export mostly." It was a vague answer, but before Ava could press further, Lucia returned with a tray. The cookies were still warm, and Sophie's face lit up when she tasted one. "These are amazing," Sophie said, the most enthusiastic Ava had heard her sound in weeks. "My grandmother's recipe," Lucia said proudly. "I'll teach you to make them sometime." While Sophie ate cookies and drank milk, Luca showed Ava around the main floor. The house was elegant but comfortable, clearly designed for living rather than showing off. "The guest rooms are upstairs," he said as they walked. "You and Sophie can have connecting rooms." "How long do you think we'll need to stay?" "Until it's safe for you to go home." Ava stopped walking. "And when will that be?" "You keep saying I'm in danger, but you won't tell me why. Who would want to hurt us? We don't have money. We don't have connections. We're nobody." Luca turned to face her. "You became somebody when you hired me." "What does that mean?" Before he could answer, Marco appeared at the far end of the hallway. He approached quickly, his expression tense. "We need to talk," Marco said to Luca in accented English. "Privately?" Luca nodded. "Take Ava and Sophie upstairs. Show them their rooms." "What's happening?" Ava asked. "Just routine security." Luca's voice was calm, but his eyes were alert. "Marco will take care of you." Marco led them up the curved staircase to the second floor. The guest rooms were spacious and elegantly furnished. Sophie's room connected to Ava's through a shared bathroom. "There are fresh towels and toiletries," Marco said. "If you need anything, press the button by the bed. Someone will come immediately." "Is Luca in some kind of trouble?" Ava asked. Marco paused in the doorway. "Luca is very good at handling trouble. You don't need to worry." After he left, Ava helped Sophie get ready for bed. Her sister brushed her teeth in the marble bathroom and put on her favorite pajamas. "I like Lucia," Sophie said as Ava tucked her into the enormous bed. "And the cookies. I'm glad, baby. Are we safe here?" Ava looked into Sophie's serious dark eyes. "Yes, we're safe." Sophie nodded and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing became deep and steady. Ava watched her sleep for a while, then went to her own room. The windows faced the back gardens, which were lit by subtle landscape lighting. Ava could see 2 men patrolling the grounds, talking quietly into small radios. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. "You think you're safe now? Rich men can't protect little girls forever." Ava's breath caught. She screenshot the message and knocked on the connecting door to Sophie's room. Her sister was still sleeping peacefully. Downstairs, she found Luca in his study. He was sitting behind a large desk, looking at multiple phone screens. When he saw her, he immediately gave her his full attention. "Another message," Ava said, showing him the screenshot. Luca's jaw tightened as he read it. "When did this come in?" "Just now. They know we're here." "No." Luca shook his head. They're guessing. This house isn't listed anywhere under my name. Then how do you explain the timing? Luca was quiet for a moment, studying the message. They're trying to scare you into making a mistake, running somewhere less secure. Who is they? You keep avoiding that question. Luca set down the phone and looked at her directly. Sit down. I'll explain. Ava settled into the chair across from his desk. The study was lined with books and felt more personal than the rest of the house. Family photos sat on the shelves. An older couple, who must be his grandparents, a young woman with dark hair and a warm smile. My family has been in business for 4 generations, Luca began. We handle imports, exports, logistics. Some of our clients are particular about privacy. What kind of clients? The kind who don't like questions. Luca's voice was careful. Last night at the restaurant, people saw me with you. In my line of work, that can create complications. Ava felt cold understanding creep over her. Are you saying this is happening because I hired you? I'm saying there are people who might try to use you to get to me. Get to you how? Luca stood up and walked to the window. By hurting someone I care about. The words hung in the air between them. Ava stared at his back, trying to process what he just said. You don't care about me, she said finally. You've known me for 2 days. Luca turned around. Haven't I? Something in his voice made her chest tight. This is crazy. I should take Sophie and leave. Go stay with someone from work or... There is no one else. Luca's voice was gentle but firm. You told me yourself. No family, no close friends. And whoever is doing this has already found your apartment and your sister's school. Ava felt trapped. He was right. She had nowhere else to go. But staying here meant accepting that she'd somehow become part of Luca's dangerous world. What kind of business are you really in? She asked. Luca was quiet for a long moment. The kind that keeps families safe. Sometimes that requires making hard choices. It wasn't a direct answer, but something in his tone told her not to push further. Not tonight. I need to check on Sophie, Ava said, standing up. She's safe here, Luca said. I promise you that. How can you be so sure? Because I won't let anyone hurt her. The conviction in his voice was absolute. Or you. Upstairs, Ava lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. The sheets were softer than anything she'd ever slept on, but sleep wouldn't come. Every sound made her tense. Footsteps in the hallway, voices outside, the settling of the old house. Around midnight, she heard Sophie crying through the connecting door. Ava rushed into the other room to find her sister sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. Bad dream? Ava asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Sophie nodded and reached for her. The scary man was there again, at the school. It was just a dream, baby. You're safe here. Promise? I promise. But even as she said it, Ava wondered if she was making a promise she couldn't keep. The next morning, Ava woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of yesterday came flooding back. The slashed tires, the threatening messages, Luca's revelation about his business. Sophie was already awake, standing by the window in her pajamas. Look, Ava, there are flowers everywhere. Ava joined her at the window. The gardens were even more beautiful in daylight. Carefully maintained beds of roses and lavender, stone pathways winding between fountains. It's like a fairy tale, Sophie said. Someone knocked on the connecting door. Good morning, came Lucia's voice. I have fresh clothes if you need them. Ava opened the door to find Lucia holding neatly folded items, jeans and sweaters in exactly their sizes. How did you know what we wear? Ava asked. Luca asked me to pick up a few things. Lucia said with a knowing smile. Men never think of practical details. After they dressed and brushed their teeth, Lucia led them downstairs to the kitchen. It was enormous but cozy, with copper pots hanging from hooks and herbs growing in window boxes. Luca was sitting at a large wooden table, drinking coffee and reading something on his phone. He looked up when they entered. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Well," Ava lied. "Thank you for the clothes." Sophie climbed onto the chair next to Luca. "Can I see the flowers?" "After breakfast," he said. "Lucia makes the best pancakes in the city." While they ate, Ava watched Luca with Sophie. He was patient with her questions, careful not to overwhelm her with attention. When Sophie accidentally spilled syrup on the table, he simply handed her a napkin without making her feel embarrassed. "I need to make some calls this morning," Luca said to Ava. "Marco will stay with you if you want to explore the house or gardens." "What kind of calls?" "Business." His tone indicated the topic wasn't open for discussion. "You'll be safe here." After breakfast, Marco gave them a tour of the main floor and grounds. The house had a library, a music room, and a conservatory filled with plants. The garden stretched for several acres, with a swimming pool and tennis court hidden behind hedges. "Mr. Romano's grandfather built most of this," Marco explained as they walked. "Luca has restored much of it." "Romano?" Ava realized she'd never heard Luca's last name. "Yes, his family has lived in this area for many years." Sophie ran ahead on the garden paths, her elephant tucked under her arm. She seemed more relaxed than Ava had seen her in months. "Marco," Ava said quietly, "what kind of business is Luca really in?" Marco glanced at her. "He helps people solve problems." "What kinds of problems?" "The kind that require discretion." Marco's tone was respectful but final. "He is a good man, Miss Moreno. That is what matters." They spent the morning outside, Sophie collecting interesting stones and flowers, while Ava tried to process their situation. The estate felt like a different world, peaceful and secure, far removed from bill collectors and threatening phone calls. But she knew it was temporary. Eventually, they'd have to go back to real life. Around noon, Luca found them in the rose garden. Sophie was showing him her collection of smooth stones when his phone rang. "Excuse me," he said, walking a few steps away to answer. Ava watched his face change as he listened. His expression grew grim, then angry. "When?" he asked sharply. "How many?" Sophie noticed the tension too. She moved closer to Ava. Luca ended the call and walked back to them. "We need to go inside, now." "What's wrong?" Ava asked. "Someone tried to break into your apartment building an hour ago. The police scared them off, but they'll be back." Ava's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" "Because I have people watching the building." Luca's voice was matter of fact. "We need to discuss your long-term situation." Back in the house, Lucia took Sophie to the kitchen for lunch while Luca and Ava went to his study. He closed the door behind them and gestured for her to sit. "You can't go back to that apartment," he said without preamble. "It's my home, my lease. Sophie's school is nearby. None of that matters if you're dead." The blunt words hit her like cold water. "You really think it's that serious?" Luca sat behind his desk and pulled up something on his computer. "Look at this." He turned the screen toward her. Security camera footage showed two men in dark clothing trying to pick the lock on her apartment building's main door. When a police car appeared at the end of the street, they walked away quickly. "They came back 3 times in 2 hours," Luca said, "each time with different approaches. These aren't random criminals. They're organized and persistent." Ava stared at the footage. The men moved with purpose, clearly familiar with breaking and entering. "What do they want?" "You. Or rather, they want to use you to get to me. Then I should leave. Take Sophie somewhere far away where we can't be used against you." Luca's eyes found hers. "Where would you go? You have no money, no family, no resources. They'd find you within a week." He was right, and they both knew it. Ava felt the walls closing in around her. "So what are you suggesting?" she asked. "Stay here. Let me handle the situation." "For how long?" "Until it's resolved." Ava stood up and walked to the window. In the garden, she could see Sophie sitting at a small table with Lucia, both of them laughing about something. "Sophie seems happy here," she admitted. "She's safe here. That's more important than happy." Ava turned around. "What aren't you telling me about yourself? Marco says you help people solve problems. You say you're an import to export, but this house, the security, the way people defer to you, none of that fits with a normal business." Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "My family protects people who can't protect themselves. Sometimes that puts us in conflict with people who prefer to operate in the shadows. That's still not a real answer. It's the answer you get for now." Luca's tone was gentle but final. "What matters is that you and Sophie are safe. Everything else is secondary." A soft knock interrupted them. Lucia opened the door slightly. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but Sophie is asking for Ava." In the kitchen, Sophie was sitting at the counter with a half-eaten sandwich. When she saw Ava, she slipped off the stool and ran to her. "Lucia says we might stay here for a while," Sophie said. "Is that true?" Ava looked at Luca, who was watching them from the doorway. His expression was unreadable. "Maybe, baby. Would you like that?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "I like my room, and Lucia promised to teach me to make bread." "What about school?" "I could teach her," Lucia offered. "I was a teacher before I came to work for the Romano family." Everything was being arranged around them, as if their old life was simply disappearing. Ava felt grateful and terrified in equal measure. That afternoon, Luca had to leave for business meetings. Before he went, he showed Ava how to use the security system and gave her Marco's direct number. "Don't leave the grounds," he said. "If anything feels wrong, call Marco immediately." "What kind of business meetings?" Ava asked. "The kind that will help resolve your situation." Luca paused at the door. "I'll be back by evening." Ava spent the afternoon with Sophie, exploring more of the house and grounds. In the library, Sophie found children's books and curled up in a window seat to read. Ava tried to read too, but her mind kept wandering. Who was Luca, really? What kind of business required this level of security? And why was he willing to risk so much for people he barely knew? Around 4:00, Marco found them in the library. "Miss Moreno, there's someone here to see you." Ava's heart jumped. "Who?" "A woman named Helena Russo. She says she knows Luca." The name meant nothing to Ava, but something in Marco's expression made her nervous. "Should I see her?" "That's your choice, but I'll stay with you." They went to the front sitting room, where a beautiful woman with auburn hair was waiting. She was perfectly dressed and composed, but her eyes held something cold. "You must be Ava," the woman said, standing gracefully. "I'm Helena, Luca's friend." Something about the way she said friend made Ava's skin crawl. "Nice to meet you," Ava said carefully. "I heard Luca was hosting guests. How lovely." Helena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Though I have to say, I'm surprised he brought you here. This house has so many memories." Marco stepped closer to Ava. "Miss Russo, I don't believe Luca is expecting you." "Oh, I don't need an invitation. Luca and I have known each other for years." Helena looked directly at Ava. Since before his wife died, actually. The words hit Ava like a physical blow. Wife? Luca had been married? I should probably go, Helena said, gathering her purse. But Ava, perhaps we could have coffee sometime? I'd love to tell you more about Luca's past. I'm sure there's so much you don't know. After Helena left, Ava sat in the empty sitting room feeling shaken. Marco had excused himself to make security calls, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Luca had been married, his wife had died, and Helena Russo clearly knew things about his past that Ava didn't. When Sophie found her 20 minutes later, Ava was still sitting in the same chair. Are you okay? Sophie asked, climbing onto the sofa beside her. I'm fine, baby. Just thinking. About what? About how much we don't know about the people who try to help us. Sophie considered this seriously. Maybe that doesn't matter if they're nice to us. Out of the mouths of babes. But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that Helena Russo's visit had been a warning. About what, she wasn't sure. When Luca returned that evening, Ava was waiting for him in his study. She'd put Sophie to bed early and spent an hour working up the courage for this conversation. How were the meetings? She asked when he entered. Productive. Luca looked tired, but satisfied. We made progress on your situation. Good. I need to ask you something. Something in her tone made him pause. What is it? Were you married? Luca went very still. Who told you that? Helena Russo came by this afternoon. She mentioned your wife. Luca's expression darkened. Helena was here? She said she was a friend of yours, that she'd known you for years. Luca walked to the window and stared out at the dark gardens. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Helena is not my friend. She shouldn't have come here. But you were married? Luca was quiet for so long that Ava thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Yes, her name was Isabella. She died 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Ava felt the inadequacy of the words. What happened? Luca turned to face her. She was killed because of who I am, because of the business I'm in. The confession hung in the air between them. Ava saw pain in his eyes, deep and carefully hidden, but unmistakable. Is that why you're helping us? Because you couldn't save her? Maybe. Luca's voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter why? Ava studied his face, the strong jaw, the dark eyes that revealed nothing and everything at once. She thought about Sophie, laughing with Lucia, sleeping peacefully in a safe bed, playing in gardens without fear. No, she said finally. It doesn't matter why. Something shifted in Luca's expression. He stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Helena will try to turn you against me, he said. She'll tell you things about my past, about the business, about what kind of man I am. What kind of man are you? Luca's eyes found hers. The kind who keeps his promises, no matter what it costs. Ava felt her breath catch. What are you promising me? That you and Sophie will be safe. Whatever happens, whoever comes for you, I won't let them hurt you. The intensity in his voice made her chest tight. She believed him, which might be the most dangerous thing of all. I should check on Sophie, she said, suddenly needing distance. Ava. Luca's voice stopped her at the door. Helena's visit wasn't coincidental. Someone sent her here to upset you, to make you doubt staying here. Don't let her succeed. Upstairs, Sophie was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. Ava sat in the chair beside the bed and watched her sister breathe. For the first time in 2 years, Sophie looked truly relaxed. Her face had lost the pinched, worried expression she'd worn since their parents died. She was gaining weight, sleeping through the night, laughing again. Whatever Luca was, whatever business he was really in, he was giving Sophie something Ava couldn't: complete security. Was that worth the risk of whatever came next? Ava woke to the sound of alarms. Harsh electronic beeping filled the house, echoing through the hallways. Red lights flashed outside her bedroom window. Sophie sat up in bed, clutching her elephant. What's happening? Before Ava could answer, Marco burst through the door. Get down on the floor. Now. Ava dropped beside Sophie's bed, pulling her sister down with her. Sophie's eyes were wide with terror. Where's Luca? Ava asked, handling the situation. Marco spoke into his radio in rapid Italian. Stay low. Don't move until I tell you. The alarms stopped as suddenly as they'd started. In the silence that followed, Ava heard distant shouting and the sound of car engines. Sophie trembled against her side. It's okay, baby, Ava whispered. We're safe. But she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. 20 minutes later, Luca appeared in the doorway. His shirt was torn, and there was blood on his knuckles, but his expression was calm. False alarm, he said, but his eyes told a different story. Someone tested our perimeter. They're gone now. Ava helped Sophie back onto the bed. Tested how? They wanted to see our response time, how many guards we have, where our weak points are. They're planning something bigger. It wasn't a question. Luca nodded grimly. Tomorrow night, we're moving you to a more secure location. Where? A safe house, completely isolated. You'll stay there until this is finished. Sophie looked between them, sensing the tension. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, Luca said gently. But some bad people are trying to scare us. We need to go somewhere they can't find us. The rest of the night passed slowly. Ava couldn't sleep, listening to every sound outside. Guards patrolled constantly now, their radios crackling with periodic check-ins. At dawn, Lucia brought breakfast to their rooms. I'm sorry about last night, she said. This is not how guests should be treated. It's not your fault. Ava picked at her eggs. Lucia, how long have you worked for Luca? 5 years, since Isabella died. Lucia's expression softened. He was lost after that. This house was like a tomb. Then you and Sophie arrived, and he started living again. What was Isabella like? Beautiful, kind. She loved children. Lucia paused. She was pregnant when she died. Ava's chest tightened. Luca hadn't just lost his wife. He'd lost his child, too. What happened to them? Lucia's face darkened. Car bomb. Meant for Luca, but Isabella was driving his car that day. She looked directly at Ava. That's why he's so protective now. He won't lose another family. The words stayed with Ava as they packed their few belongings. Luca had already lost everything once. No wonder he was willing to fight so hard to protect them. That afternoon, Helena Russo returned. Ava was in the garden with Sophie when Marco approached, his expression tense. She's back, he said simply. I don't want to see her. She says it's urgent, about tonight's move. Something cold settled in Ava's stomach. How could Helena know about the safe house? In the sitting room, Helena looked perfectly composed despite the obvious security preparations happening around the house. Ava, I'm glad you agreed to see me. Helena's smile was sharp. I thought you should know what you're really involved in. I don't want to hear it. Luca is taking you to the Benedetto compound tonight. Do you know what that means? Despite herself, Ava felt curious. What? It means you've become a full participant in a Mafia war. Helena leaned forward. The Benedetto family controls the north side of the city. They're Luca's allies, but they're also his competitors. By accepting their protection, you're choosing sides. Ava's blood went cold. Mafia? Oh, you didn't know? Helena's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Luca Romano is one of the most powerful crime bosses in the state. The Romano family has been running this territory for 60 years. The room felt like it was spinning. Ava thought about Luca's evasive answers, the armed guards, the way people deferred to him. You're lying. Am I? Think about it. The estate, the security, the way he handled your boss at that restaurant. Normal businessmen don't have that kind of power. Helena's voice was almost sympathetic. He's been lying to you from the beginning. Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding her elephant. Ava, is everything okay? Helena's eyes fixed on Sophie with disturbing intensity. And this must be your sister. Such a pretty little girl. Something predatory in Helena's voice made Ava stand up quickly. We're done here. Of course. Helena gathered her purse. But Ava, ask yourself this. If Luca is really trying to protect you, why did the threat start the night you met him? Don't you think that's quite a coincidence? After Helena left, Ava sat in the empty room with her head spinning. Everything the woman had said fit together too neatly to be lies. The timeline, the security, Luca's careful non-answers about his business. Had she walked herself and Sophie directly into the middle of a criminal war? That evening, Luca found her packing their bags with mechanical precision. Ready to go? He asked. Ava turned to face him. Tell me the truth about what you do. Something shifted in Luca's expression. What did Helena say to you? That you're in the Mafia. That the people threatening us are your enemies, not some random criminals who noticed me at a restaurant. Luca closed the door behind him and leaned against it. What else? That the Benedetto compound is where you're taking us tonight. That by going there, Sophie and I become legitimate targets in whatever war you're fighting. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady but resigned. Yes. My family has been involved in organized business for 4 generations. Yes, the people threatening you are my enemies. And yes, by protecting you, I've made you part of this world. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. So Helena was right. About the facts, yes, but not about my motivations. Luca stepped closer. I didn't plan for this to happen. I saw you in that hospital lobby, desperate and alone, and something in me responded. When you needed help at that restaurant, I helped. Everything that's happened since then has been me trying to keep you safe. Safe? Ava's voice rose. We're running from death threats because I hired you to pretend to be my boyfriend for one night. You're running from death threats because someone is using you to get to me. That's my fault, not yours. Ava felt tears burning her eyes. I should have known. Normal men don't move the way you do, don't inspire fear the way you do. I was just so desperate. Hey, Luca's voice was gentle. Look at me. Reluctantly, Ava met his eyes. You were protecting your sister with the only resources you had. There's no shame in that. His voice was soft but certain. And despite what Helena told you, you're safer with me than anywhere else. How can you be sure? Because I've already lost one family to my enemies. I won't lose another. The raw pain in his voice made her chest ache. She thought about Sophie's laughter echoing through the house, about sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, about the way Luca had held Sophie during her nightmare. The Benedetto compound, she said finally. What's it like? Isolated, secure, boring. A slight smile touched Luca's mouth. It's not a prison, Ava. It's just safe. Sophie appeared between them, tugging on Ava's shirt. Are we going on a trip? Yes, baby, a short one. Can I bring my elephant? Of course. Sophie nodded seriously and went to get her stuffed animal. Ava watched her go, then looked back at Luca. If I do this, if we go with you tonight, I need to know everything. No more vague answers about family business. No more pretending this is temporary. I need to understand exactly what we're walking into. Agreed. Luca's eyes held hers. But Ava, once you know everything, you can't unknow it. Are you sure you want that? She thought about Sophie sleeping peacefully, about the alternative of returning to their apartment where men tried to break in, about the threatening messages and the man at Sophie's school. I'm sure. They left the estate after dark in a convoy of 3 black cars. Ava and Sophie rode with Luca in the middle vehicle, while armed guards flanked them front and rear. During the 2-hour drive, Luca explained the situation with careful detail. The Romano family controlled shipping and logistics throughout the region. They had enemies, the Castellano family from the south, who wanted to expand their territory. The threats against you started because Lorenzo Castellano thinks you're important to me, Luca said. He's not wrong. But why would he think that? We barely knew each other when this started. Because I protected you at that restaurant with more force than the situation required. Because I had you watched the next day. Because when your tires were slashed, I responded immediately. Luca's voice was matter-of-fact. In this business, those kinds of reactions reveal your priorities. Sophie had fallen asleep against Ava's shoulder. The countryside flew past in darkness, broken only by occasional farmhouse lights. What happens if we can't stay hidden, if they keep finding us? Luca's jaw tightened. Then I handle the problem directly. What does that mean? It means Lorenzo Castellano stops being a threat. The cold certainty in his voice made Ava shiver. She was beginning to understand the kind of man she'd gotten involved with. Someone capable of both gentle protection and absolute violence. The Benedetto compound sat on a hilltop surrounded by woods. High walls and guard towers made it look more like a fortress than a home. Armed men opened heavy gates to let their convoy through. This is where we're staying? Ava asked. Just the guest house. It's more private than the main residence. The guest house turned out to be a comfortable 2-story building with a kitchen, living area, and bedrooms. It was elegant but clearly designed for security, reinforced windows, multiple locks, cameras covering every angle. Home sweet home, Marco said as he checked the perimeter alarms. Ava put Sophie to bed in the smaller bedroom, then joined Luca on the terrace outside. The view stretched for miles in every direction, nothing but trees and darkness. It's beautiful here, she said, and completely isolated. The nearest neighbor is 15 miles away. They sat in comfortable silence, the stress of the day finally catching up with them. Ava found herself studying Luca's profile in the moonlight. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. When did you know you loved Isabella? Luca was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant. The day I met her. She was working at a hospital, taking care of children with cancer. She saw this hardened criminal walk into her ward and decided to lecture me about the proper way to hold a premature baby. Despite everything, Ava smiled. She sounds brave. Terrifying. She had no idea who I was or what I was capable of. She just saw someone who needed to learn how to be gentle. Luca's voice grew softer. She taught me that strength and tenderness weren't opposites. Is that why you're so patient with Sophie? Sophie reminds me that not everything in this world is broken. Luca looked at her. So do you. Something in his voice made her chest tight. Luca, I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you're scared and confused and probably angry." His eyes found hers in the darkness. "But I need you to know that whatever happens, protecting you and Sophie isn't a burden. It's a privilege." Before Ava could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello? Mommy?" Sophie's terrified voice came through the speaker. Ava's blood turned to ice. "Sophie, where are you?" "I don't know. The bad men took me. They said to tell you—" The phone went silent. Ava stared at the screen, her mind refusing to process what she'd heard. Sophie was supposed to be sleeping safely in the bedroom 20 feet away. Luca was already moving, speaking urgently into his radio. "All units, check the guest house. Now." They ran inside together. Sophie's bedroom was empty, the window standing open. Fresh footprints marked the garden soil outside. "How?" Ava whispered. "How did they get past all the security?" Luca's face was granite. "Because someone here helped them." Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "The perimeter guards are unconscious, drugged, not killed. Someone wanted them alive to send a message." Ava's legs gave out. She sank onto Sophie's empty bed, clutching her sister's abandoned elephant. "We'll get her back," Luca said, his voice deadly calm. "I promise you that." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm going to tear this city apart until I find her." Luca's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Romano." A distorted voice came through the speaker. "We have the little girl. You have 24 hours to turn yourself over, or she dies. Come alone to the old warehouse district. We'll be in touch with the exact location." The line went dead. Ava looked at Luca through her tears. "You can't go. It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Luca's voice was ice cold. "But they made one mistake." "What?" "They took someone I love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Luca loved Sophie, and maybe her too. "What do we do?" Ava asked. Luca's eyes were dark with promise and threat. "We remind Lorenzo Castellano why no one crosses the Romano family." He made a series of phone calls, his voice clipped and authoritative. Within an hour, the compound was buzzing with activity. Cars arrived carrying men in expensive suits and serious expressions. "Family meeting," Marco explained to Ava. "Every Romano ally within 100 miles is coming here." Ava sat in the kitchen, holding Sophie's elephant and listening to voices in the next room. They spoke mostly in Italian, but she caught enough English words to understand they were planning something massive. Around midnight, Luca found her there. "We know where they're holding Sophie," he said without preamble. "Where?" "An abandoned factory outside the city. My cousin saw them move her there 2 hours ago." "Is she okay?" "As far as we know, yes. They need her alive to maintain leverage." Ava felt a spark of hope. "So we call the police." "The police can't help with this." Luca's voice was gentle but firm. "This is family business now." "What does that mean?" "It means Lorenzo Castellano just declared war on the wrong family." Luca knelt beside her chair and took her hands in his. "Ava, I need you to stay here while we handle this. You'll be safe with the Benedetto family." "No." The word came out stronger than she'd expected. "Sophie is my sister. I'm coming with you." "It's too dangerous." "She's going to be terrified. She'll need to see me to know she's safe." Ava's voice was steady despite her fear. "I'm coming, Luca. Don't try to stop me." Something in her tone made him nod slowly. "Stay behind me at all times. Do exactly what I tell you. No hesitation." "Agreed." "And Ava?" Luca's eyes were soft despite the violence brewing around them. "When this is over, we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" I mean, after tonight, there's no going back to your old life. Lorenzo will keep coming for you as long as he thinks you matter to me. Luca's voice was quiet but certain. The only way to keep you and Sophie safe permanently is to make you part of my family. Really part of it. Ava's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you, both of you. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life protecting that love. Before she could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway. It's time. Lucas stood and offered Ava his hand. Ready? She thought about Sophie alone and frightened, about the choice between safety and freedom, about the man who'd turned her world upside down and somehow made it better. I'm ready. They drove through the night toward whatever waited in that abandoned factory, toward Sophie, toward answers, toward a future Ava couldn't have imagined a week ago. In the distance, the first hints of dawn were touching the horizon. The abandoned factory sat like a wound against the dawn sky. Broken windows stared down at them as their convoy approached through empty streets. Ava's hand shook as she gripped Sophie's elephant. Remember, Lucas said quietly, stay behind me. Don't move until I tell you. Around them, 20 men checked weapons and radios. These weren't the polite security guards from the estate. These were soldiers, and their faces showed it. Marco appeared at Luca's window. Thermal imaging shows 8 hostiles inside. Sophie's on the second floor, northeast corner. Guards? 2 on her. The rest are positioned at entry points. Luca nodded and turned to Ava. This ends in 15 minutes, one way or another. The assault was swift and brutal. Luca's men moved through the building like shadows, taking down Castellano's guards with professional efficiency. Ava stayed close to Luca as they climbed the rusted stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sophie, she called as they reached the second floor. Ava! Sophie's voice came from behind a metal door at the end of the hallway. Luca tried the handle, locked. He stepped back and kicked the door open with one powerful blow. Sophie sat tied to a chair in the center of the room, tears streaming down her face but otherwise unharmed. 2 men flanked her, guns drawn. Let her go, Lucas said calmly. Drop your weapons first, one of the men demanded. Instead of complying, Lucas smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Ava had ever seen. Marco, he said without taking his eyes off the gunman. 2 suppressed shots came from the doorway behind them. Both men dropped instantly. Marco stepped over their bodies and began untying Sophie. Is anyone hurt? Sophie asked, looking around the room with wide eyes. No, baby, Ava said, running to her. We're all okay. Sophie clung to her, trembling but trying to be brave. The men said they were taking me on a trip, but it wasn't a good trip. I know, sweetheart. It's over now. Luca knelt beside them. Sophie, I'm sorry this happened. It will never happen again. Sophie looked at him seriously. Promise. I promise. Good. Sophie hugged her elephant tighter. Can we go home now? Home. Ava realized she wasn't sure where that was anymore. They drove back to the compound as the sun rose fully, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sophie fell asleep in the car, exhausted by her ordeal. Ava held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her sister's hair. It's finished, Lucas said quietly. Lorenzo won't be a problem anymore. What happened to him? He's been dealt with. Luca's tone indicated the topic was closed. Back at the guest house, Lucia was waiting with warm food and gentle hands to help Sophie. The older woman fussed over her like a grandmother, checking for injuries and offering comfort. She's resilient, Lucia told Ava later as they watched Sophie color pictures at the kitchen table. Children are stronger than we think. That evening, after Sophie was safely asleep, Ava found Luca on the terrace. He was staring out at the dark woods, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Thinking about Isabella?" she asked. "Thinking about you." He turned to face her. "About what I said earlier." Ava's chest tightened. In all the chaos, she'd almost forgotten his confession. "That you love me. That I love you both. That I want you to stay." "Stay where? Here? In hiding?" "Stay with me, in whatever home we choose to build." Luca set down his glass and stepped closer. "I know this isn't the life you planned. I know it comes with risks and complications you never wanted. But Sophie is happy here. You're safe here. And for the first time since Isabella died, I feel like I'm living instead of just surviving." Ava looked through the window at Sophie's sleeping form. Her sister had been through hell in the last 24 hours, but she'd bounced back with the resilience of childhood. She liked Lucia, trusted Luca, felt secure in this strange new world. "What would our life look like?" Ava asked. "Whatever we want it to look like." Luca's voice was soft. "We could live at the estate or find a house somewhere quieter. Sophie could go to a good private school, or Lucia could continue teaching her at home. You could work if you wanted to, or pursue something you've always dreamed of." "And the business? The violence?" "I'll always be who I am, Ava, but I can insulate you from most of it." Luca's eyes were honest. "There will always be some danger. There's no way around that. But there will also be protection, resources, and people who would die before letting anyone hurt you or Sophie." Ava was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. A month ago, her biggest worry had been paying Sophie's medical bills. Now she was contemplating marriage to a man who just eliminated his enemies with military precision. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you saw me in that hospital lobby, what did you really think?" Luca was quiet for a moment. "I thought you looked like someone drowning who was still trying to save someone else. It reminded me of Isabella." "Is that why you helped me? Because I reminded you of her?" "At first, maybe." Luca's eyes found hers. "But not anymore. You're not Isabella, Ava. You're stronger than she was in different ways. You've kept yourself and Sophie alive for 2 years with no help from anyone. You've made impossible choices and sacrificed everything for your sister's safety. Isabella sounds like she was amazing. She was. But she lived in a gentle world, protected from the harsh realities of my business. You've seen those realities and you're still here." Luca's voice was soft with admiration. "That takes a different kind of courage." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm terrified, Luca, of this world, of you, of what loving you might cost us." "I know." He stepped closer, close enough to touch her face gently. "But are you more terrified of staying or leaving?" Before she could answer, Sophie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "I had another bad dream," she said sleepily. Ava immediately went to her. "Come here, baby." They sat together on the terrace couch, Sophie curled between them. Gradually, her breathing evened out as she fell back asleep. "She feels safe with both of us," Luca observed quietly. Ava looked down at her sister's peaceful face. Sophie had been through trauma today, but she wasn't showing signs of the anxiety that usually followed her bad experiences. She felt protected here, truly protected. "What happened to your first family?" Ava said carefully. "Could it happen again?" "Not the same way. I've learned from those mistakes." Luca's voice was certain. "And this time, I'm not fighting alone. The Romano family is stronger now. Our alliances are solid. What happened today? Eliminating Lorenzo's entire operation in one night, that sends a message to anyone else who might consider threatening what's mine." So we'd be safe as anyone can be in this world. Ava looked at Luca in the moonlight, this dangerous, gentle man who'd turned her life upside down and somehow made it better. She thought about Sophie laughing in Lucia's kitchen, sleeping peacefully in beautiful rooms, never worrying about medical bills or eviction notices. If we stay, she said slowly, it has to be real. Not just protection, not just gratitude. If we're going to be a family, it has to be because we choose each other. I'm choosing you, Luca said simply. Every day, for as long as you'll let me. Something in his voice made her breath catch. Even knowing I come with complications? A sick sister, no money, no connections? Especially knowing that. Luca's smile was soft. You think I care about money or connections? I care about your courage, your loyalty, the way you love Sophie completely and unconditionally. And I care about your gentleness with her, your protection, the way you make us feel safe and valued. They looked at each other in the moonlight, Sophie sleeping peacefully between them. This wasn't the romance Ava had imagined for herself. No candlelit dinners or flower-filled courtships. Instead, it was born from desperation and danger, forged in crisis, proven through violence, but it was real, and it was theirs. Marry me, Luca said quietly. Is that a question or a statement? It's a hope. Ava looked down at Sophie, then back at Luca. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, we'll stay. Yes, we'll build something beautiful out of all this chaos. Luca's smile was radiant. He leaned over Sophie's sleeping form and kissed Ava gently, sealing their promise. When they broke apart, Sophie stirred slightly. Are we staying here forever? She asked sleepily. Would you like that? Ava asked. Sophie nodded against her shoulder. I like Lucia and the gardens, and Luca reads good bedtime stories. Then yes, baby, we're staying. Good. Sophie's voice was drowsy but satisfied. I was getting tired of moving around. 6 months later, Ava woke to sunlight streaming through the windows of their bedroom at the Romano estate. The house felt alive again, footsteps in hallways, voices in the kitchen, laughter in the gardens. Sophie was already awake, sitting by the window in her pajamas and braiding her doll's hair. Morning, baby, Ava said, stretching. Lucia's making pancakes, Sophie reported, and Luca said we can plant vegetables today if the weather holds. Ava smiled. Sophie had grown 3 inches and gained 10 pounds since they'd moved here permanently. Her seizures were under control with the new medications, and she was reading above grade level thanks to Lucia's patient teaching. Downstairs, Luca was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table while Lucia bustled around the stove. He looked up when Ava entered and smiled, the warm, unguarded expression he wore only with family. Good morning, wife. The title still gave her butterflies. They'd married quietly 3 months ago in the estate's garden, with only Sophie, Lucia, Marco, and a priest present. Sophie had been the flower girl and had taken her role very seriously. Good morning, husband. Ava kissed him and accepted the coffee cup he offered. Any interesting news? The Benedetto family announced their youngest daughter's engagement. Construction started on the new shipping terminal downtown. Luca folded the paper. Nothing that concerns us? This was their routine now. Peaceful mornings, quiet conversations, the simple domestic happiness Ava had never thought possible. The business still existed, but Luca had restructured it to be more legitimate and less hands-on. He was around most days, working from his home office when needed. Sophie bounced into the kitchen and climbed into her chair. Pancakes! After you eat some fruit, Lucia said firmly, placing a bowl of berries in front of her. But pancakes are better than fruit. Fruit first, pancakes second, that's the rule. Sophie sighed dramatically, but began eating her berries. She developed a special relationship with Lucia, part grandmother and part co-conspirator in minor household mischief. After breakfast, Luca and Sophie worked in the garden while Ava read on the terrace. She was taking online courses now, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. Luca had insisted she pursue whatever interested her, money no object. "Ava," Sophie called from the vegetable beds, "look how big the tomatoes got." Ava walked over to admire Sophie's carefully tended plants. Her sister had discovered a love of gardening, spending hours with Luca learning about soil and seasons and the patience required to grow things properly. "They're beautiful, baby. Luca says we can make sauce when they're ready." Sophie looked up at him adoringly. "He's teaching me his grandmother's recipe." Luca caught Ava's eye and smiled. He'd been wonderful with Sophie from the beginning, but watching their relationship deepen over months had been one of the greatest joys of Ava's new life. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Ava and Luca sat in his study. She was grading some of Sophie's math work while he reviewed reports from his various businesses. "Marco called," Lucas said, and without looking up from his papers. "The Chicago family wants to meet next month about the logistics contract." "Will you have to travel?" "Probably, but just for a few days." He set down his pen and looked at her. "Want to come with me? Sophie could stay with Lucia." "I like that." Their life had found a rhythm, security balanced with purpose, protection balanced with freedom. Ava had worried that she'd feel trapped or useless in this world, but instead she felt liberated. Without constant financial stress, she could focus on Sophie's happiness and her own interests. "Any regrets?" Luca asked, as if reading her thoughts. "About what?" "This life. Me. Giving up your independence." Ava considered the question seriously. She traded uncertainty for security, anonymity for protection, struggle for comfort. But she'd also gained love, family, and peace of mind. "No regrets," she said finally. "What about you? Any regrets about taking in 2 strays?" Luca's smile was soft. "You weren't strays. You were exactly what this house was missing." Later that night, as they lay in bed together, Ava listened to the sounds of their home. The old house settling, guards making quiet rounds, Sophie's even breathing from down the hall. "Luca?" "I love you." She said it easily now, without fear or hesitation. Love had grown naturally between them, built on trust and shared purpose and genuine affection. "I love you too," he replied, pulling her closer. "Both of you. More than I thought possible." Ava closed her eyes and let herself sink into sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments of this life they'd built from. Desperation and choice. But tonight, they were safe. They were together. They were home. Outside their windows, dawn was still hours away. The garden slept under starlight, and the estate stood strong against whatever might come. In her dreams, Ava saw Sophie running through sunlit fields, laughing with the pure joy of a child who knew she was loved and protected. When she woke the next morning, that dream felt like a promise.